The small town of Iquitos trembled under the scorching Amazonian sun. The air shimmered, heavy with humidity, while the murmur of the jungle rolled in waves from beyond the horizon. Amid this restless silence stood two travelers, Michael and Emily, young adventurers who had come from afar in search of what many considered a myth, the lost sanctuary of the Ashaninka tribe, a place where time itself was said to bend. Emily's hair gleamed like wet gold under the merciless sun. She pressed a worn leather-bound notebook against her chest, her fingers trembling as if holding not paper, but destiny itself. Michael, tall, broad-shouldered, with a constant spark of determination in his eyes, adjusted the straps of his backpack and looked at her with quiet reassurance. "Are you ready?" he asked, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. Emily smiled faintly. "If I said no, we'd still go," he chuckled. That was the truth. Their path had already been chosen long before they set foot on this land. Legends told of sacred symbols hidden deep within the forest, guarded by shadows of ancestors who never allowed intruders to leave unchanged. The guide who was supposed to meet them never appeared. Locals whispered about the forest swallowing those who dared to cross its invisible boundary. Some villagers even avoided looking at Michael and Emily directly, as if afraid the curse might leap from them onto anyone too curious. But there was no turning back. The map Emily held was drawn decades ago by her grandfather, a traveler who vanished without a trace in these very jungles. His last words, preserved in faded ink, "Seek the wall of roots. Behind it, the truth will breathe." The forest greeted them like a predator, silently, watchfully. The further they walked, the less the sunlight pierced through the thick canopy. Vibrant birds screamed overhead, monkeys rustled in the distance, yet beneath it all lay a profound, unsettling hush, the kind of silence that seemed to listen. By dusk, when the air turned heavy with mist, they found a place near a sluggish brown river to set camp. Emily traced the map with her finger, her eyes wide with fascination and fear. "Look," she whispered. "If this is the river, then we're already close to the first sign." Michael glanced around. The forest shifted like a living thing. Every shadow seemed to long, every tree trunk a sentinel. "Close is not always good," he muttered. Yet he couldn't deny the thrill crawling up his spine. That night, the jungle did not sleep. It breathed. Leaves shivered with no end, footsteps echoed where no one walked, and strange whispers curled through the dark like smoke. Michael lay awake, gripping the knife by his side, staring into the abyss of trees. Emily slept restlessly, mumbling fragments of words in her dreams, words in a language she had never spoken before. By morning, they both knew. The journey had already begun to change them. The second day plunged them deeper into the green labyrinth. Vines hung like serpents, moss clung to their clothes, and the damp air pressed down on their lungs. Every few steps, Emily would pause, scribbling notes into her grandfather's journal, as if to anchor herself to reality. Hours slipped by until suddenly Michael froze. Just ahead, a mark was carved into the bark of a colossal ceiba tree. It wasn't random. The symbol curved in precise, deliberate lines, almost glowing against the pale wood. A spiral crossed by a jagged line, eerily similar to the drawings in Emily's notebook. Her breath hitched. This is it, the first sign. But before Michael could respond, a sound tore through the forest, not an animal, not a bird. It was a scream, human, sharp, echoing, then abruptly cut short. They both stiffened. The silence afterward was unbearable. "Did you?" Emily began, her voice trembling. "Yes." Michael's hand tightened around the handle of his machete. "We're not alone." They pressed on cautiously, the oppressive weight of unseen eyes crawling over them. Shadows danced unnaturally, as though the trees themselves leaned closer to listen. And then they stumbled upon it, a shredded piece of fabric tangled in the undergrowth, stained with something dark. Emily's knees nearly buckled. "Michael, what if?" "No," he interrupted firmly. "We keep moving. If we turn back now, we'll never forgive ourselves." But as they continued, the jungle grew stranger. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though no fire burned. Shapes flickered in the corners of their vision, slender figures that dissolved when faced head-on. Whispers drifted again, clearer this time, threading through the trees. The words were unintelligible, yet Emily felt them etch themselves into her memory like hot iron. By twilight, exhaustion weighed heavy on their limbs. They reached a small clearing where a circle of stones lay half buried in the earth. Emily crouched, brushing away dirt. The stones were arranged perfectly, almost like an altar. Her voice cracked. Michael, this is a ritual site. The forest answered with a sudden gust of cold air that extinguished their lantern flame. In the suffocating darkness, Michael reached for Emily's hand. Her fingers clutched his, trembling. And then, just beyond the clearing, two faint lights appeared, eyes, watching, and blinking. Michael's blood ran cold. For the first time, he understood. The legends were not stories. Something in the jungle had seen them, chosen them, and would not let them go. The jungle swallowed them whole. Each step carried them deeper into a world that seemed less like a forest and more like a dream woven from roots and shadows. The further they advanced, the more oppressive the silence became, broken only by the shrill cries of cicadas and the distant thud of unseen creatures moving through the underbrush. Michael hacked at the vines with his machete, sweat glistening down his brow. His shoulders burned with strain, but he didn't stop. Emily trailed just behind him, clutching her notebook as though it could ward off the creeping dread. Michael, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the jungle's hum, what if the scream we heard yesterday wasn't a person? He paused mid-swing, his blade stuck in a thick root. Slowly, he turned toward her. What do you mean? Emily's eyes darted between the trees, restless, haunted. What if it was meant for us, a warning, or a lure? The words lodged in his chest like a thorn. He wanted to dismiss it, but the forest offered no comfort. The air smelled faintly metallic, like old blood. Shadows twisted unnaturally, stretching too far, curling around trunks like fingers. By midday, they stumbled upon a trail, narrow, winding, lined with stones half consumed by moss. It was man-made, recently used. Emily crouched, brushing away leaves. The prints etched into the soil weren't from boots. They were bare feet, small, narrow, countless, like a procession. They're watching us, she murmured. I can feel it. Michael clenched his jaw, then let them. We didn't come here to turn back. But even as he said it, unease coiled in his gut. Hours later, thunder rolled across the canopy, low and distant. Rain followed, a sudden downpour that transformed the jungle into a suffocating flood. The trail became a river of mud, sucking at their boots. Emily slipped, catching herself against a gnarled trunk. Her hand came away smeared not with sap but with something black and tar-like. Her eyes widened. Michael, this tree is bleeding. He bent closer, touching the substance. It clung to his skin like oil, thick and warm. The bark bore shallow carvings, spirals, crosses, jagged lines, the same symbols from her grandfather's notes. The storm howled, lightning flashing white through the canopy, and for a heartbeat Michael saw them, figures standing among the trees, motionless, tall, their faces masked by bone and paint, watching. When the lightning faded, they were gone. Emily's breath hitched. Tell me you saw them. Michael swallowed. His voice was low, raw. I did. That night, they found refuge in a shallow cave carved into the hillside. The walls were etched with the same strange spirals, glowing faintly in the dim lantern light. Emily pressed her notebook against them, her hand trembling as she sketched. These are messages. I think they're trying to guide us. Michael sat near the entrance, knife in hand, staring out into the storm. The jungle pulsed with life, but beneath it all, he sensed a deeper rhythm, a heartbeat, slow and ancient, echoing from the ground itself. For the first time, he wondered if they had walked into something far larger than themselves, something that would not let them leave unchanged. Dawn bled across the jungle in shades of crimson and gold, yet the forest floor remained dim, as if the sun itself hesitated to intrude. Michael woke to the sound of Emily whispering. She wasn't speaking to him, nor to herself. Her words slipped like water, melodic, alien. He touched her shoulder gently. Emily. She startled, blinking rapidly. I don't know what that was, it just came to me. Like I was repeating something. Her notebook lay open on her lap. On the page were unfamiliar symbols, sharp, angular, nothing like the drawings she had made the night before. Her handwriting, yet not her own. Michael frowned. You don't remember writing this? Emily shook her head, pale. It's like someone moved my hand. The weight of the jungle pressed harder, as though the trees themselves leaned closer to listen. Michael closed the notebook, his jaw tight. We keep going. If this is connected to your grandfather, then the answers are ahead, not here. They left the cave and continued along the hidden trail. Soon, the air grew cooler, heavy with mist. A low hum vibrated through the ground beneath their feet, almost like chanting carried on the earth itself. The path led them to a wall of roots so massive it seemed to block the world itself. Twisted vines tangled together, thick as pillars, reaching high into the canopy. The map had promised this place the wall of roots. Emily's eyes filled with wonder and dread. This is it. Behind here, the truth will breathe. Michael raised his machete, hacking at the vines. Each strike echoed like a drumbeat. As the roots fell away, the smell of damp stone drifted through. A hidden passage opened before them, dark and yawning like the mouth of a beast. The hum grew louder, whispers layered over it, distant yet distinct. Some pleaded, some warned, others sang. Emily's body trembled, yet she stepped forward, compelled. Inside, the walls glistened with moisture, painted in faded pigments, crimson and ochre depictions of rituals, hunters, and towering figures with hollow eyes. The drawings seemed to shift in the torchlight, moving like shadows on water. Emily traced one figure with her finger. This is them, the Watchers. Michael's skin prickled, or their warning. As they moved deeper, the air thinned, heavy with the scent of decay. The tunnel twisted, descending steeply, until at last they reached a chamber. At its center stood an altar carved from black stone, upon which lay bones bleached white by time. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. These are offerings. Michael approached, his chest tight. The bones weren't human, not entirely. Some were too long, too twisted. And then, from the shadows beyond the altar, eyes glimmered. Dozens of them. Emily clutched his arm, her nails digging into his skin. Her voice trembled. Michael, they're here. The chamber pulsed with life, as if the walls themselves breathed. And in that suffocating moment, they both realized they had not been searching for the lost sanctuary. The sanctuary had been waiting for them.
The passage narrowed until the walls pressed close, damp and suffocating. The light of Michael's torch flickered weakly, fighting against the heavy darkness that seemed almost alive. Each step sank into soil, damp with centuries of rot, the air so thick it clung to their throats like smoke. The silence was unbearable. It wasn't the ordinary stillness of a forest, but a silence that listened, weighed, and pressed upon them like an invisible hand. Somewhere deep within the walls, faint scratching sounds pulsed in rhythm, as though something burrowed slowly through the stone. Emily kept her gaze fixed ahead, her body stiff, as though the very act of looking back would summon whatever followed them. Her notebook, pressed to her chest, felt heavier than before. Not paper, but stone. Pages inside had begun to curl and darken, though no water had touched them. The tunnel opened suddenly into a cavern vast enough to swallow light. Stalactites hung like the teeth of a sleeping beast, dripping endlessly into pools that shimmered with unnatural hues of green and violet. The water rippled without cause, reflecting shifting shapes, tall silhouettes, elongated limbs, hollow faces staring from beneath the surface. Emily's breath came shallow, yet she moved closer to the pool, drawn as though the reflections belonged to memory rather than illusion. The water pulsed, and the figures leaned closer, their features sharpening. One face, pale and lifeless, mirrored her own. She stumbled back, clutching her throat. The reflection lingered long after she turned away. Michael gripped her arm firmly and pulled her onward. The chamber narrowed again into another corridor. The walls here bore claw marks, deep grooves raked into the stone, as if countless hands had tried to carve their way out. Black stains trailed between the scratches, not old but fresh, glistening in the weak torchlight. The further they moved, the colder the air grew, until every breath was mist. The ground beneath their boots cracked like brittle bone. At last, they emerged into a hollow where the ceiling arched like a cathedral, lost to time. Columns of roots descended from above, wrapping around broken idols carved from black stone. Some idols still bore faces, twisted into expressions of agony. Others were shattered, their fragments buried in soil. Emily approached one intact idol, her hand trembling as she reached toward its surface. The stone was warm, throbbing faintly, as if blood pulsed beneath. The idol's mouth, jagged and wide, seemed to stretch further as her fingers hovered near. A low hum reverberated through the chamber, rising until it became a chorus of whispers too layered to discern. Michael pulled her back sharply. The hum ceased at once, leaving a hollow ringing in their ears. Neither spoke. Words felt dangerous here, as though sound itself might awaken something that listened far too closely. And so, in silence, they continued deeper.
The jungle returned abruptly, wild, dense, alive, as if the tunnel had spat them back into another world. Yet something had changed. The forest no longer looked the same. Trees twisted in impossible patterns, roots weaving upward into arches that resembled doorways. Leaves glowed faintly, exuding a phosphorescent shimmer that illuminated their path without need of fire. The air was heavy with perfume, sweet and intoxicating, yet beneath it lingered the stench of decay. Flowers as large as human heads bloomed in clusters, their petals wet, glistening with dew that dripped like blood. Some swayed though no wind stirred, their stamens twitching as if aware of passing bodies. Michael and Emily walked in silence. Neither dared to break the fragile balance of this place. The forest watched them. Every rustle of leaves, every shifting shadow suggested eyes in countless numbers. As dusk bled across the sky, they reached a clearing where colossal trees encircled an open space. Their trunks curved inward, forming a natural dome. In the center stood a stone monolith, taller than any man, carved with spirals and jagged lines identical to those etched into the notebook. The ground around it was littered with offerings, feathers, bones, clay vessels filled with dark liquid. Some bones bore human shapes, others did not. Emily's steps slowed. Her notebook grew hot against her chest, as though resonating with the carvings. Without meaning to, she opened it. Pages fluttered wildly until one fixed itself open. The symbols inked on the parchment glowed faintly in the dying light, identical to those on the stone. She dropped the book, startled, but the pages continued to turn on their own, stopping at another symbol, one she had never drawn, one not in her grandfather's notes. A spiral collapsing inward, ending in a sharp point. The ground beneath them trembled. Leaves shivered violently. From the monolith came a sound, a low, guttural chant, ancient and resonant, though no mouth spoke it. Michael drew his knife instinctively, though the gesture felt absurd against what they faced. The monolith's surface rippled, shifting as if stone had turned to liquid. Faces pressed outward from within, screaming silently before melting back into the spirals. Emily clutched his arm, her nails digging deep, her body rigid. Her lips moved soundlessly, echoing the chant. Michael tried to shake her, but she would not stop. Her eyes rolled back, glowing faintly with reflected light. The monolith pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat, then grew still. The clearing sank into silence once more. Only Emily's ragged breaths and the distant cry of unseen creatures broke the air. Michael realized then, they were not merely uncovering the path her grandfather had taken. They were retracing something far older, something that had been waiting, patient and eternal, for someone to follow. And they had come too far to turn back. The jungle's embrace tightened, its trees twisting into grotesque shapes, roots arching overhead to form a corridor of bone and wood. Michael and Emily passed beneath in silence, their steps muffled by a carpet of moss that seemed to swallow sound whole. The deeper they went, the more the air thickened, heavy, moist, metallic, like the breath of something vast and unseen. The wall was not of stone or root, as the notebook had suggested, but a living barrier. Trees fused together, their bark hardened into a seamless surface that pulsed faintly, as if veins ran beneath. Michael pressed his palm against it, warmth radiated back, alive, resisting. Without warning, a fissure split open, jagged and sudden, revealing a narrow passage within. No light escaped, only a current of air that smelled of ash and ancient dust. Emily's body stiffened, but her feet moved forward on their own, as if guided by a will not her own. Inside, the walls closed tight around them, slick with a resinous sheen that glimmered like wet flesh. Symbols crawled across the surface, glowing faintly, spirals, jagged lines, figures with hollow eyes. They shifted as the torchlight flickered, rearranging into patterns that vanished when stared at directly. The corridor bent downward, descending into a hollow where the air vibrated with a steady pulse. The sound was not heard but felt, coursing through bone and marrow. Each beat pressed harder, until Michael's teeth ached with the rhythm. The chamber at the end was vast, shaped like a dome, the ceiling hidden in shadow. At its center stood a circle of stone surrounding a pit that exhaled mist. The mist coiled upward in delicate tendrils, shaping itself into vague forms, tall, skeletal, faceless. Emily knelt by the pit, her hands trembling. The notebook slipped open, pages fluttering until one stilled. The symbol matched the pit exactly, a spiral collapsing inward. Her lips parted, whispering words in the same alien tongue as before. Her voice was not hers, but layered, as though countless others spoke through her. Michael seized her shoulders, shaking her. "Emily, stop." But the pit answered, releasing a soundless scream. The mist thickened, rushing outward like a tide, filling the chamber. Faces materialized in the haze, eyes hollow, mouths stretched wide. They pressed close, whispering in broken fragments, "Stay, belong, ours." Michael dragged Emily back, though her eyes glowed faintly, entranced. The mist recoiled only at the edges of the torch flame, hissing as if in pain. He brandished it wildly, forcing a narrow path. They stumbled through another opening on the far side of the chamber, gasping as the mist shrank behind them. But the whispers did not stop. They clung to the air, to the bones in their bodies, to the beating of their hearts. For the first time, Michael realized that the wall was not just a barrier. It was alive, a threshold between worlds. And they had crossed it. The world beyond the wall was unlike anything they had known. The jungle here seemed older, darker, untouched by sun or sky. Trees loomed impossibly tall, their trunks fused into spirals that stretched endlessly upward. The air was heavy with mist that glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Each breath burned cold, searing the lungs, and every sound echoed unnaturally, as though the forest itself repeated their movements. Emily moved with vacant eyes, guided by a rhythm only she could hear. Michael followed, his hand hovering near her arm, ready to pull her back from whatever abyss awaited. But his grip faltered, her steps were steady, assured, as though she belonged here more than he did. They reached a clearing where the ground fell away into a vast chasm. A void stretched beneath them, bottomless, its surface rippling like liquid shadow. From it rose a faint wind, carrying with it the smell of ash and the faintest sound of weeping. Emily approached the edge, her face pale, her body trembling as if in prayer. The notebook in her hands glowed faintly, pages opening without touch. The ink rearranged itself, symbols shifting into a spiral that extended off the page, downward, into the abyss. Michael seized her arm. "Emily, don't." She turned to him, and for a moment, he saw not her eyes but the reflection of countless others, hollow, endless, ancient. Her lips moved, though the voice was not her own. "He called us here. We answer." The chasm exhaled, a violent rush of air that nearly dragged them forward. The ground trembled, cracks splitting outward like veins of fire. From the depths, shapes rose, vast and skeletal, their forms woven from shadow and mist. They towered above, heads crowned with antlers of bone, eyes like burning hollows. Michael pulled Emily back, but her body resisted, every muscle straining toward the void. The notebook burned in her hands, smoke curling from its edges. The shapes leaned closer, their breath cold, their whispers deafening. The abyss itself seemed to inhale, drawing the forest, the air, their very breath downward. Michael wrapped his arms around her, dragging her back with every ounce of strength he had. His torch flared violently, light searing against the shadows. The shapes recoiled, their forms unraveling into mist. The chasm stilled, though its breath lingered, waiting. Emily collapsed against him, the notebook falling silent at last. But as Michael stared into the void, he knew it was not over. The abyss had seen them. And it would not forget. Night fell like a curtain of black velvet, swallowing even the faint glow of the strange forest. Michael and Emily staggered onward, their bodies trembling from exhaustion, their minds fraying under the weight of unseen voices. The jungle no longer felt like earth and leaf but like a labyrinth of veins, pulsing with a rhythm older than time. Emily walked ahead, her movements sharp, mechanical, as though some unseen hand guided her. The notebook clung to her side, its pages whispering with every step though no wind stirred. Michael wanted to tear it from her, burn it, cast it into the abyss, yet something in his gut told him it would not matter. The book was no longer just paper. It was alive. They reached another clearing where the trees formed a circle around a stone dais. Upon it lay remnants of rituals, shattered masks, blackened bones, vessels filled with hardened resin. At the dais's center rose a pillar of stone, cracked and jagged, its surface scarred with the same spirals that haunted their journey. Emily's body stiffened. Her lips moved without her consent, forming the same words she had whispered in dreams. The forest hushed, every insect, every leaf pausing to listen. Michael stepped forward, voice rough. "Emily, fight it. Don't let them take you." But her eyes no longer saw him. They saw only the pillar, glowing faintly as if answering her. The ground trembled. The air thickened, vibrating with a chorus of voices too vast to bear. From the shadows between the trees emerged the Watchers, tall, faceless figures draped in woven roots, their limbs elongated, their presence bending the air itself. They moved without sound, surrounding the clearing in silent reverence. Michael's knife felt useless in his hand, a child's toy before God's. Still, he placed himself between Emily and the figures. His voice cracked. "You can't have her." The Watchers did not advance. Instead, the pillar split, revealing a hollow core glowing with black fire. The flames licked upward, swallowing the air, and in its roar Michael heard the truth: it was not Emily they wanted. It was both of them. Chosen. Marked. Offered. Emily turned slowly, her face pale, eyes reflecting the fire. For a fleeting moment, recognition flickered. "Michael," her voice was faint, almost human again. "We can't escape this." He shook his head violently. "No. There's always a choice." The fire surged higher. The Watchers stepped closer. And in that suffocating moment, Michael realized, choice was an illusion. They had been led here from the beginning. Still, he seized Emily's hand, pulling her back from the dais. Her scream tore the silence as the black fire reached outward, tendrils of shadow grasping for them both. There was only one path left, into the heart of the flames. The fire did not burn. It consumed without pain, swallowing them in silence. For a moment, Michael felt weightless, adrift in a void where light and shadow twisted endlessly. Emily floated beside him, her body fragile, her face serene, as though she had surrendered to the current. Around them, visions unfurled. Countless faces flickered through the dark, travelers, wanderers, those who had come before. Their mouths moved in whispers, repeating the same word, belong. Michael reached for Emily, his hand trembling. Their fingers touched, and for a heartbeat he believed they could escape. But the abyss had other plans. The visions sharpened. He saw her grandfather, his eyes hollow, his body half-shadow, reaching out not in warning but in welcome. Behind him, the Watchers towered, their faceless heads bowed in silent acceptance. Emily's grip loosened. Her lips curved into a faint smile, as though at last she understood. She let go. Michael cried out, the sound swallowed by the void. She drifted away, her body dissolving into the mist of countless others, her form absorbed into the endless spiral of shadows. The abyss pulsed, a heartbeat that was not his own, and Michael felt it grip him as well. He fought, thrashing, clawing, but the current was merciless. His torch, his knife, his very name, all stripped away until nothing remained but silence. And then, suddenly, he stood again. The jungle surrounded him, quiet and familiar. Dawn painted the sky in gold, and birds sang as though nothing had happened. The air smelled of wet earth, fresh and alive. But Emily was gone. The notebook lay at his feet, its pages blank, its weight unbearable. Michael lifted it slowly, his reflection staring back from its cover, not his own face, but hollow eyes, stretched mouth, a shadow wearing his skin. He dropped the book and stumbled backward, the forest ringing with laughter that was not laughter, with whispers that were not words. For the first time, he understood. They had never escaped. They had crossed the border. And now, they belonged.